The notification sound pierced through Maya Chen's cramped studio apartment at 3:47 a.m., jolting her awake from dreams of code and cascading data streams. Her phone screen cast an ethereal blue glow across the walls lined with whiteboards covered in algorithms, user flow diagrams, and sticky notes that had become her life's work over the past 3 years. The email subject line made her heart skip. Confidential discussion, Amazon leadership team. Maya's hands trembled as she reached for her glasses, knocking over a cold cup of coffee that had been sitting on her nightstand since yesterday evening. The dark liquid spread across a stack of printed user feedback forms, each one carefully annotated in her meticulous handwriting. These forms represented thousands of hours of work, countless sleepless nights, and the unwavering belief that her hobby business, as her sister Lily constantly called it, could actually change how small businesses manage their inventory. 3 floors below, the city hummed with the pre-dawn energy of delivery trucks and early commuters, but Maya's world had suddenly contracted to the glowing rectangle in her palm. She read the email once, twice, then a third time, each pass revealing new layers of impossibility. Amazon's vice president of strategic acquisitions wanted to schedule a call. They had been monitoring her platform's growth with great interest. The phrase, potential partnership discussions, made her stomach flutter with a mixture of excitement and terror. Inventory flow had started as Maya's solution to a problem she'd witnessed firsthand while working part-time at her neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez's small grocery store during graduate school. The elderly woman had been losing money for months, unable to track which products were selling, which were expiring, and when to reorder. Maya had built a simple web application over a weekend, something that could photograph barcodes, track inventory levels, and send automated reorder alerts. Mrs. Rodriguez's grateful tears when she saw her first monthly profit report had been worth more than any grade Maya had ever received. But Lily had laughed. She could still hear the sharp edge of her sister's voice from last month's family dinner, how it cut through the warm chatter of their parents' dining room like a blade through silk. Maya still playing with her little computer project, Lily had announced to their cousins, her voice carrying that particular tone she'd perfected in law school, dismissive, superior, tinged with just enough affection to avoid being called cruel. She thinks she's going to compete with billion-dollar companies from her studio apartment. Their parents had exchanged the look that Maya had become intimately familiar with over the years. Loving but worried, proud but practical. Her father, a mechanical engineer who had emigrated from Taiwan with nothing but a briefcase and dreams, had gently suggested that Maya might want to consider more stable career options. Her mother had nodded, her fingers absently straightening the tablecloth as she always did when uncomfortable conversations arose. Maya had excused herself early that night, claiming she needed to respond to user support emails. It wasn't entirely a lie. She had responded to 47 emails, fixed 2 critical bugs, and implemented a feature request that 3 different users had been asking for, but mostly she had sat in her car in her parents' driveway for 20 minutes watching the warm light spill from their windows and wondering if she was chasing an impossible dream. Now, staring at Amazon's email, those doubts seemed both distant and intensely present. Her laptop sat open on her makeshift desk, a door balanced on 2 filing cabinets, its screen showing Inventory Flow's admin dashboard. The numbers that once seemed modest now felt surreal. 47,000 active users across 6 countries, $2.3 million in annual recurring revenue, and a 94% customer satisfaction rating that her team of 3 freelance developers had taken years to achieve. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her business partner and former roommate, Sarah Martinez. "Did you see the overnight signups? We just hit 500 new users in the past 6 hours. Something's happening." Sarah worked the night shift at a data center while building Inventory Flow's mobile app during her breaks, her dedication matched only by Maya's own obsessive attention to user experience. Another text followed immediately. "Also, did you know TechCrunch mentioned us in their morning newsletter? Quote, the scrappy inventory management platform that's quietly revolutionizing small business operations." Maya's throat tightened. TechCrunch, the publication that Lily read religiously, often forwarding articles about successful startups with messages like, "Look what real entrepreneurs are doing." Maya wondered if her sister had seen the newsletter, if she was awake somewhere across town in her downtown law firm apartment. perhaps reconsidering her assessment of Maya's hobby. The coffee stain on her user feedback forms had spread, creating abstract patterns that reminded Maya of the growth charts she'd been studying obsessively for months. Each data point represented a real person: restaurant owners in Portland who could finally track their food costs, bookstore managers in rural Kansas who had eliminated manual inventory counts, and craft brewery operators who could predict demand fluctuations with unprecedented accuracy. Maya pulled up her email drafts where she'd been composing a message to Amazon's recruitment team about a software engineering position. She'd written and rewritten it dozens of times, each version a small surrender to the practical voice in her head that sounded suspiciously like Lily's. The draft felt like betrayal now, a hedge against her own success that she was ashamed to have even considered. Her heating system clicked on, filling the silence with its familiar mechanical rhythm. Maya had grown to love these early morning hours, when the world felt suspended between night and day, when her mind could focus with laser intensity on problems that seemed insurmountable in daylight. She had solved inventory flow's most complex technical challenges during these liminal moments: the real-time synchronization issues, the scalability bottlenecks, the security vulnerabilities that could have destroyed everything she'd built. Maya's bulletin board caught her eye, covered with printed emails from users whose businesses had been transformed by her platform. There was Jennifer from Austin, whose food truck operation had expanded to 3 vehicles after inventory flow helped her optimize purchasing and reduce waste. Marcus from Detroit had written a paragraph-long testimonial about how the platform had saved his family's hardware store during the pandemic, enabling them to pivot to online sales with inventory they could actually track and fulfill. But it was Mrs. Rodriguez's handwritten note that Maya's eyes always found first, taped in the center of the board like a North Star. "Mija, you gave me my dignity back. I am not just surviving anymore. I am thriving. Your mother should be so proud." Maya's mother had never seen the note. Maya had never found the right moment to share it, never quite believed it would carry the weight she hoped it would in her family's economy of achievement and recognition. Lily's law degree hung prominently in their parents' living room, alongside her father's engineering awards and her mother's nursing certifications. Maya's accomplishments existed in the digital realm, invisible, and therefore somehow less real. The Amazon email stared back at her, waiting for a response. She realized she was holding her breath, as if exhaling might make the opportunity disappear. She had read about acquisition calls, about entrepreneurs who had built companies from nothing, only to sell them for amounts that made newspaper headlines. But those stories always featured people who looked nothing like her. Confident men in hoodies, Harvard dropouts, serial entrepreneurs with venture capital connections. Maya was a first-generation immigrant's daughter who had learned to code from library books, who had maxed out 3 credit cards to keep inventory flow running during its first year, who still did her own customer service because she couldn't bear the thought of users not getting the personal attention they deserved. She was someone whose sister thought she was playing with toys instead of building an empire. Her reflection in the laptop screen looked back at her, exhausted but determined, wearing a 3-day-old t-shirt and glasses held together with electrical tape. This was not what success was supposed to look like according to the magazines and websites that featured young entrepreneurs. But maybe, Maya thought as she began typing her response to Amazon, that was exactly why it mattered. The city was beginning to wake up beyond her windows, streetlights giving way to the soft gray promise of dawn. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with growing confidence, each word a small act of revolution against every doubt she had carried, every dismissal she had endured, every moment she had wondered if she was fooling herself about what she could achieve. She had built something real, something valuable, something that mattered to thousands of people whose businesses and livelihoods depended on her code running smoothly every single second. Whatever happened next, whatever conversation awaited her with one of the world's largest companies, Maya knew she was no longer the same person who had been laughed at around her family's dinner table. The email was sent at 4:23 a.m., launching into the digital ether a response that would either change everything or confirm that some dreams were too big for someone like her to hold. Maya leaned back in her chair, listening to the city wake up around her, and allowed herself to imagine,
just for a moment, what it might feel like to prove everyone wrong. Maya's morning routine had been the same for 3 years. Coffee first, then a scan of overnight support tickets, followed by checking server performance metrics while her neighbors began their conventional workdays. But today, with Amazon's response promising a call within 48 hours, every familiar ritual felt weighted with new significance. She opened Inventory Flow's customer dashboard and watched the numbers tick upward in real time. Each new sign-up represented someone who had found her platform through word of mouth, organic search results, or increasingly through industry forums where users recommended her solution over enterprise-level alternatives that cost 10 times as much. Maya had never spent money on advertising. She couldn't afford to, but somehow Inventory Flow had grown through the quiet evangelism of satisfied customers. The irony wasn't lost on her. Lily's law firm spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on marketing campaigns, golf tournaments, and networking events to acquire clients. Maya's users found her because her software simply worked better than anything else they had tried. There was something deeply satisfying about that organic validation, something that felt more honest than the manufactured success stories she saw in business magazines. Maya's phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. Sarah's name flashed on the screen, and Maya could hear the excitement in her voice before she even said hello. "Maya, you need to look at our analytics dashboard right now. I mean, right now." Sarah's voice carried the slightly breathless quality it took on when she discovered something significant in their data. Maya pulled up the real-time analytics, and her coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips. Traffic to their website had increased by 340% overnight. Sign-up conversions were at 23%, nearly double their usual rate. Most remarkably, the geographic distribution showed new users from markets they'd never penetrated, enterprise-level businesses in major metropolitan areas, international companies from countries where they'd never even considered expanding. "How is this happening?" Maya whispered, scrolling through the user registration data with growing amazement. "I've been digging into the referral sources," Sarah explained. "That TechCrunch mention triggered something. It got picked up by 3 industry newsletters, shared on 2 major LinkedIn influencer accounts, and somehow made it onto a software recommendation thread on Reddit that has 50,000 upvotes. Maya, people are discovering us who never would have found us otherwise." Maya's chest tightened with a familiar combination of elation and terror. Growth was what she had dreamed of, but rapid growth meant infrastructure challenges, customer service demands, and the constant fear that their small team wouldn't be able to maintain the quality that had built their reputation. "Can our servers handle this load?" Maya asked, already pulling up their hosting dashboard. "I upgraded us to the next tier at 2 a.m. when I saw the traffic spike. We're stable for now, but Maya," Sarah's voice took on a more serious tone, "if this growth continues, we're going to need to make some big decisions. Real employees, not just contractors, professional customer service, maybe even an office." An office. The phrase hit Maya like a physical thing. She looked around her studio apartment, at the makeshift desk and the whiteboards that had become her command center, at the life she had built in service of this dream. The thought of Inventory Flow outgrowing the space felt both thrilling and terrifying.
Maya's laptop chimed with a video call notification. Her parents' faces appeared on screen, her mother's expression carrying that particular mixture of concern and curiosity that Maya had learned to read like weather patterns. "Maya, sweetheart, Lily told us she saw an article about your project in some business newsletter," her mother said, carefully neutral in the way that meant she was trying not to say the wrong thing. "We wanted to check on you." Maya's father leaned closer to their camera, his reading glasses perched on his nose. "She said there was something about inventory management software. Is this the same thing you've been working on in your apartment?" The question hung in the air, loaded with years of gentle concern disguised as casual interest. Maya had learned to hear the subtext in her parents' conversations about her work. They wanted to be supportive, but they also wanted her to be safe, to have the kind of stable career they'd sacrificed so much to make possible for their daughters. "Yes, Dad, it's the same platform. We're growing faster than I expected." Maya tried to keep her voice level, not wanting to oversell something that still felt too fragile to fully believe in. Her mother's face brightened slightly. "Growing means more people are using it. Almost 50,000 people now, small business owners mostly, restaurant managers, retail store operators, warehouse supervisors. They use inventory flow to track what they have in stock, when to reorder products, how to reduce waste." Her father was quiet for a moment, the way he got when he was working through complex engineering problems. 50,000 people trust your software with their businesses? The way he phrased it, trust your software with their businesses, made Maya's throat tight. That was exactly what it was, what she'd been too modest or too frightened to fully acknowledge. Thousands of people woke up every day and trusted her code to help them make decisions that affected their livelihoods, their employees' jobs, their families' financial security. The responsibility is... Maya started, then stopped. How could she explain the weight of it? How every bug report felt personal, every feature request represented someone's real struggle. Every outage meant actual businesses losing actual money. "It's like when you design a bridge," her father said suddenly, his engineer's mind making connections. "People drive across it every day without thinking about the calculations, the stress analyses, the safety margins. But you think about it. You carry the responsibility for their safety." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. Her father understood. After years of polite questions about her computer project, he finally understood what she was building and why it mattered. "Lily called this morning," her mother said, her voice taking on the diplomatic tone she used when navigating the complex dynamics between her daughters. She seemed surprised by the article. She wanted to know if we'd known about how successful your business had become. Maya closed her eyes. Of course Lily had called. Of course she'd seen the TechCrunch piece and realized that Maya's hobby was generating more revenue than some of her law firm's major clients. I could imagine the conversation. Lily's carefully controlled surprise, her parents' gentle confusion about why Maya had never explained the scope of what she was building. "I didn't want to make it sound bigger than it was. I still don't know if it's sustainable. Technology changes so fast, and we're competing with companies that have thousands of employees and unlimited resources." But even as she said it, Maya knew it wasn't entirely true. She had downplayed Inventory Flow's success because she was afraid of jinxing it, afraid of her family's expectations, afraid of the responsibility that came with admitting she'd built something significant. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Ms. Chen, this is David Kim from Amazon's Strategic Acquisitions team. I'll be leading our conversation tomorrow at 2 p.m. Pacific. Looking forward to discussing Inventory Flow's impressive growth trajectory." Maya's parents were still talking about something, asking questions about her business model, her team, her plans for the future, but the words seemed to come from very far away. Amazon's Strategic Acquisitions team. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. The reality of it was finally sinking in, and Maya felt like she might float away from her own life. After ending the call with her parents, Maya sat in the silence of her apartment, surrounded by the artifacts of her obsession: empty coffee cups, protein bar wrappers, notebooks filled with user flow diagrams, printed code reviews covered in her handwriting. This space had been her laboratory, her refuge, her entire world for 3 years. The idea that it might all be about to change felt surreal. She opened her laptop and began reviewing Inventory Flow's metrics, preparing for tomorrow's call with the kind of meticulous attention to detail that had become second nature: revenue growth quarter over quarter, user acquisition costs, customer lifetime value, churn rates, all the numbers that would either validate her work or expose the gaps in her strategy.
But more than the numbers, Maya found herself thinking about the stories. Mrs. Rodriguez, whose grocery store had gone from barely surviving to thriving. Jennifer, whose food truck empire had grown from one vehicle to three. Marcus, whose family hardware store had navigated the pandemic because inventory flow had enabled their digital transformation. These weren't just statistics in a growth dashboard. They were real people whose lives had been touched by her work, whose success had become intertwined with her own. Whatever happened tomorrow, whatever Amazon wanted to discuss, Maya realized she owed it to these users to approach the conversation not as someone asking for validation, but as the CEO of a company that had already changed thousands of lives. The sun was setting beyond her windows, painting her studio apartment in shades of gold and amber. Maya made herself a proper dinner for the first time in weeks, not just another protein bar consumed while coding, and sat at her small dining table, looking out at the city where so many of her dreams had taken shape. Tomorrow, she would talk to one of the world's largest companies about the hobby business her sister had dismissed. Tonight, she would allow herself to feel proud of what she'd built, regardless of what the future held. Maya woke up at 5:30 a.m. on the morning of her Amazon call, her body automatically responding to the anxiety that had been building since yesterday. She'd managed only 3 hours of sleep, spending most of the night rehearsing answers to questions she imagined David Kim might ask. Her notebook lay open beside her bed, filled with talking points, revenue projections, and user testimonials she'd organized like evidence in a case she was trying to prove. The morning support queue contained 43 tickets, higher than usual, but manageable. Maya had learned to triage user issues with surgical precision, critical bugs first, then feature requests, finally, general questions that could wait until after lunch. But today, one ticket made her stomach drop. Subject: inventory flow crashed during peak hours, lost $3,000 in sales. Maya clicked the ticket open with trembling fingers. Roberto Silva, who operated a chain of 3 auto parts stores in Phoenix, had experienced a system failure during their busiest sales period yesterday. The crash had prevented his staff from accessing inventory levels, processing orders, or updating stock counts. Customers had left empty-handed, and Roberto had been forced to close 2 locations early while trying to manually reconcile their inventory data. This isn't just inconvenience. My business depends on your platform working correctly. I trusted inventory flow with everything, and now I'm looking at thousands of dollars in lost revenue and angry customers. I need to know this won't happen again, or I'll have to find another solution. Maya's hands shook as she pulled up their server logs from yesterday afternoon. There, buried in thousands of lines of performance data, she found it. A memory leak in their new automated reporting feature that had caused cascading failures across their entire system. The issue had lasted 17 minutes before their automated recovery protocols kicked in, but 17 minutes was enough to devastate a business like Roberto's. This was Maya's worst nightmare materialized. She'd built inventory flow and the promise that small businesses could rely on her platform the way they relied on electricity or running water. The idea that her code, her responsibility, had directly cost someone thousands of dollars felt like a punch to the chest. Maya immediately called Sarah, who answered on the first ring despite the early hour. "I saw the ticket," Sarah said before Maya could speak. "I've been awake since 4 a.m. working on a fix. The memory leak is plugged, and I've implemented additional monitoring to catch similar issues before they cascade." "Sarah, this is exactly what I was afraid of. We're growing too fast, taking on more responsibility than we can handle with just the 3 of us. What if this happens again? What if it happens during today's call with Amazon?" Maya could hear Sarah moving around her apartment, probably already dressed and ready for another 18-hour workday. Their partnership had developed its own rhythm over the years. Maya handling user experience and business strategy, Sarah managing the technical infrastructure, both of them sharing the crushing responsibility of keeping 47,000 businesses running smoothly. "Maya, listen to me. Every platform has outages. Amazon Web Services goes down. Microsoft Azure has failures. The difference is that we fix our problems and we learn from them. Roberto's issue sucked, but we're going to make it right, and our system is stronger now because of it. Maya wanted to believe Sarah's confidence, but the knot in her stomach only tightened. She'd read enough startup horror stories to know how quickly success could turn into catastrophic failure. Growing businesses that couldn't scale their infrastructure, promising platforms that crumbled under user load, entrepreneurs who'd built something beautiful only to watch it collapse under its own weight. Maya spent the next 2 hours crafting a response to Roberto, offering a full refund for the month, a credit for future service, and a detailed explanation of the steps they were taking to prevent similar issues. But as she typed, she couldn't shake the feeling that apologies and credits weren't enough. Roberto needed reliability, not just compensation for unreliability. At 10 a.m., Maya's phone rang with a call from her sister Lily. "So," Lily's voice carried that familiar tone of carefully controlled curiosity. "Mom mentioned that your inventory thing is doing better than expected?" Maya closed her eyes. She'd been dreading this conversation, knowing that Lily would eventually circle back to the TechCrunch article and want details about inventory flow success. "It's growing, yes. Growing how much? Like, are we talking about real revenue or just people signing up for free trials?" The question stung because it revealed exactly what Lily thought of Maya's work, that it was somehow less substantial than real business, that success in technology was somehow easier or less valid than success in traditional industries like law. Maya said, "We're at about $2.3 million in annual recurring revenue," watching her reflection in her laptop screen as she delivered the number that she'd been afraid to say out loud to anyone in her family. The silence on the other end of the line stretched long enough for Maya to wonder if the call had dropped. When Lily finally spoke, her voice had changed completely. "Maya, are you serious? $2.3 million? Annual recurring revenue. Yes. It's not profit. We have expenses, server costs, contractor payments, taxes. But yes, that's what businesses are paying us each year for our service."
Maya could hear Lily moving around, probably pacing her downtown apartment the way she did when she was processing complex legal arguments. "Jesus, Maya, I had no idea. I mean, I knew you were working on something, but I thought it was like a side project. Something you'd maybe sell for a few $1,000s eventually." The admission hung between them, laying bare years of misunderstanding and dismissed achievements. Maya realized that Lily's dismissive comments hadn't been intentionally cruel. They'd been based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what Maya was building and why it mattered. "I didn't know how to explain it," Maya said. "It started so small and it grew so gradually that I never felt like I could point to a moment where it became a real business. It just evolved." "Maya, companies like mine pay more than $2.3 million for office leases. You built something that generates that much revenue from your studio apartment. That's not evolution, that's revolution." Before Maya could respond, her email chimed with a message that made her blood run cold. The subject line read, "Urgent, class action lawsuit filed against Inventory Flow Technologies." Maya's hands shook as she opened the message from a law firm she'd never heard of. Attorney named Patricia Vance was representing 12 small businesses that claimed Inventory Flow's systematic failures and inadequate infrastructure had cost them a combined $47,000 in lost revenue over the past 6 months. The lawsuit alleged negligence, breach of contract, and false advertising regarding the platform's reliability. "Lily, I have to go. Something's happening with the business." "Maya, wait, what's wrong? You sound terrified." Maya stared at the lawsuit notification, her vision blurring with tears of frustration and fear. "Someone's suing us. Multiple businesses are claiming our platform caused them financial losses, and they filed a class action lawsuit. Forward me everything right now. Email, lawsuit filing, any related documents. Maya, don't talk to anyone, don't sign anything, don't make any statements until I review this. I'm serious. Not one word to anyone." The transformation in Lily's voice was immediate and complete. The dismissive older sister had vanished, replaced by a fierce legal advocate who understood exactly how dangerous this situation could become. Maya had never been more grateful for her sister's expertise,
Even as she felt crushed by the irony, her success had finally gotten Lily's attention, but only because it was now under attack. Maya forwarded the legal documents, then sat staring at her computer screen as her entire world felt like it was crumbling around her. In 4 hours, she was supposed to have the most important business conversation of her life with Amazon's acquisition team. Instead, she was facing the possibility that inventory flow could be destroyed by legal action before she even had a chance to defend what she'd built. Her phone buzzed with texts from users who had seen news of the lawsuit online. Some expressed support and confidence in the platform. Others asked worried questions about inventory flow's future stability. A few canceled their subscriptions immediately, not wanting to risk their businesses on a platform that was facing legal challenges. Maya watched her user dashboard in real time as the cancellations mounted. Each one represented someone who had trusted her work, invested time in learning her system, integrated inventory flow into their daily operations. Losing their confidence felt like losing pieces of herself. Sarah called at 11:30 a.m., her voice tight with controlled panic. "Maya, I've been monitoring the situation online. The lawsuit is getting picked up by tech blogs. Someone leaked details to reporters, and they're framing it as a story about startups that grow too fast and can't handle the responsibility. How bad is it?" TechCrunch is running a follow-up piece called From Hero to Zero When Small Startups Can't Scale. 3 other industry publications have reached out for comment. Maya, this is becoming a narrative about us, specifically about whether small technology companies can compete with enterprise solutions.
Maya felt sick. The very success that had brought Amazon's attention was now being used as evidence that she'd been irresponsible, that inventory flow was too small to handle the trust that thousands of businesses had placed in it. What do I tell Amazon? How do I explain this in our call this afternoon? You tell them the truth, Sarah said firmly, that we're a growing company facing growing pains, but we're committed to our users and we're working to solve every problem. Maybe Amazon's interest is exactly what we need right now: resources, infrastructure, expertise that could help us scale properly. Maya looked at her reflection in her laptop screen again, at the tired face of someone who had spent 3 years building something she believed in, only to watch it threatened by the very success she dreamed of achieving. In 3 hours, she would either find a path forward with one of the world's most powerful companies, or she would watch everything she'd built become a cautionary tale about ambition exceeding capability. The city hummed outside her windows, indifferent to the crisis unfolding in her studio apartment. Maya closed her eyes and tried to remember why she'd started this journey. What had driven her to build inventory flow in the first place? Mrs. Rodriguez's grateful smile, the satisfaction of solving complex problems with elegant code, and the quiet pride of knowing that her work mattered to people she'd never met. Whatever happened next, Maya realized, she couldn't let fear make her decisions. She'd built something valuable, something that had genuinely helped thousands of people. The lawsuit was a challenge, not a verdict. The negative press was noise, not truth. And the conversation with Amazon was an opportunity, not a judgment. Maya opened her notebook and began preparing for the most important call of her professional life. At 1:45 p.m. Pacific Time, Maya sat in her studio apartment, wearing her most professional blazer over a t-shirt, her laptop positioned to frame her carefully arranged bookshelf instead of her unmade bed. She'd spent the morning responding to user concerns about the lawsuit, coordinating with Sarah on infrastructure improvements, and reviewing financial projections with an obsessive attention to detail that bordered on panic. Lily had called twice with legal updates. The lawsuit wasn't as devastating as it initially appeared. Most of the claim damages were inflated, and several of the participating businesses had service agreements that included liability limitations. But the negative press was real, and the threat to inventory flow's reputation could be more damaging than any financial judgment. At exactly 2 p.m. Pacific Time, Maya's laptop chimed with an incoming video call from David Kim. She accepted with fingers that felt steadier than she expected, and found herself face to face with a man who looked younger than she'd imagined, probably early 40s, wearing a casual button-down shirt, and sitting in what appeared to be a home office with Amazon's logo subtly visible on the wall behind him. Maya, thank you for making time for this conversation. I've been looking forward to meeting the founder behind Inventory Flow's impressive growth story. David's voice carried none of the corporate stiffness Maya had expected. He sounded genuinely curious, almost conversational, as if they were friends catching up rather than CEO and potential acquirer discussing a multi-million-dollar transaction. "Thank you for reaching out," Maya replied, grateful that her voice sounded steadier than she felt. "I'll be honest, I never imagined having this conversation with Amazon." David laughed, a sound that seemed to fill his entire office. "That's exactly why we're interested. The companies that plan from day one to be acquired by us usually aren't building the kind of authentic solutions that users actually need. Tell me about Inventory Flow's origin story." Maya found herself relaxing as she described Mrs. Rodriguez's grocery store, the weekend she'd spent building the first prototype, the gradual realization that small businesses everywhere struggled with the same inventory management challenges. David listened with an intensity that reminded Maya of how she felt when users described their problems, completely focused, asking follow-up questions that revealed deep understanding. "Your platform's user retention rates are remarkable," David said, pulling up what appeared to be a comprehensive analysis of Inventory Flow's metrics: 94% customer satisfaction, 89% annual retention, and your Net Promoter Score is higher than most enterprise software platforms that cost 10 times as much. How do you maintain that level of service with such a small team? Maya felt a flutter of pride, mixed with anxiety. Amazon had clearly done extensive research on her company, probably knowing details about Inventory Flow's performance that she'd never shared publicly. "We stay close to our users," Maya explained. "I personally respond to support tickets. Sarah, my technical partner, monitors our servers around the clock. We treat every bug report like a personal emergency because for our users, it is a personal emergency." Speaking of emergencies, David's tone shifted slightly, becoming more serious, but not hostile. "We're aware of the legal challenges you're currently facing. How are you handling the lawsuit and the negative press coverage?" Maya's stomach tightened, but she forced herself to meet David's gaze directly through the camera. This was the moment where honesty would either save her opportunity or destroy it. "The lawsuit represents 12 businesses out of 47,000 users, a 0.025% complaint rate. Most of their claims relate to a 17-minute outage that we've since prevented through infrastructure improvements. But you're right that it's a wake-up call about scaling challenges." Maya paused, then decided to lean fully into transparency. "David, I built Inventory Flow in this apartment with money from maxed-out credit cards. We've grown faster than I ever imagined possible, and we're hitting the limits of what 3 people can manage alone. The lawsuit isn't frivolous, but it's also not representative of our users' experience." David nodded slowly, making notes on what appeared to be a legal pad filled with handwritten questions. "Maya, can you walk me through your user support philosophy? Our research suggests that Inventory Flow's customer service is significantly better than anything else in your market segment." Maya found herself describing her approach to user relationships, how she read every piece of feedback personally, how she'd built features based on individual user requests, how she'd spent hours on calls with struggling business owners to help them optimize their inventory strategies. As she talked, she realized she was describing something that couldn't be easily replicated at scale, something that made Inventory Flow valuable, precisely because it was personal. "That level of attention is incredibly rare," David said. "Most software platforms treat users as statistics. You treat them as individuals. It's resulted in organic growth that most companies spend millions in advertising to achieve." Maya felt a surge of validation that was almost overwhelming. After years of family members who didn't understand her work, investors who had passed on her pitches, and industry observers who had dismissed her as too small to matter, here was someone from one of the world's most successful companies who truly understood what she'd built.
Maya, I want to be direct about why we're having this conversation. Amazon has been looking for opportunities to strengthen our small business services division. Inventory Flow represents exactly the kind of authentic, user-focused platform that could integrate with our existing ecosystem. Maya's heart began racing. This was the moment she'd been imagining and dreading, the actual acquisition discussion that could change everything about her life and her company. When you say integrate, what does that look like in practice? David leaned forward, his expression becoming more animated. Imagine if Inventory Flow's inventory management capabilities were built directly into Amazon's seller tools, logistics network, and fulfillment services. Your users could track inventory across multiple sales channels, their physical stores, online marketplaces, direct-to-consumer websites, all from a single platform backed by Amazon's infrastructure.
Maya felt her breath catch. The vision David was describing was exactly what she dreamed of building, but had never had the resources to achieve. A truly comprehensive solution that could scale with businesses as they grew from single-location operations to multi-channel enterprises. Your current users would maintain access to everything they love about Inventory Flow, David continued, but they'd also gain access to Amazon's supply chain optimization, predictive analytics, and global logistics network. Small businesses could compete with enterprise-level operations using the same tools that Amazon uses internally. What would happen to our team? Maya asked, the practical question emerging through her excitement. Sarah and I have built Inventory Flow's culture around personal relationships with users. I'm not sure that translates to a large corporation. David's expression grew thoughtful. Maya, that's exactly why this conversation is happening at the leadership level rather than through our usual acquisition pipeline. We don't want to absorb Inventory Flow and lose what makes it special. We want to learn from your approach and apply it across our small business services division. Maya felt a chill of realization. This wasn't just about acquiring her technology. Amazon was interested in acquiring her methodology, her understanding of small business needs, her ability to build user relationships at scale. You'd want me to stay on after acquisition? Maya asked. We'd want you to lead a new division focused on small business solutions, with Sarah heading up technical development, and a budget to build the kind of user-focused platform you've always envisioned. Maya, we're not just talking about acquiring Inventory Flow. We're talking about you becoming an Amazon VP and building something that could serve millions of small businesses globally. The offer hit Maya like a physical force. Vice president at Amazon, millions of users, a budget that would eliminate every resource constraint she'd ever faced, the ability to solve problems for small businesses at a scale she'd only dreamed of. But even as the opportunity overwhelmed her with its scope and potential, Maya found herself thinking about Mrs. Rodriguez, about Roberto and his auto parts stores, about the thousands of users who trusted her personal attention to their problems. David, I need to ask about autonomy. Inventory Flow works because we can move quickly, respond to user needs immediately, build features based on real feedback rather than committee decisions. How would that work within Amazon's structure? David was quiet for a moment, and Maya could see him weighing his response carefully. Maya, I won't lie to you. Amazon is a large organization with processes and protocols that don't exist in a 3-person startup. But we've learned from past acquisitions that the companies we integrate most successfully are the ones where we preserve what made them valuable in the first place. Maya felt a chill of realization. This wasn't just about acquiring her technology. Amazon was interested in acquiring her methodology, her understanding of small business needs, her ability to build user relationships at scale. You'd want me to stay on after acquisition? Maya asked. We'd want you to lead a new division focused on small business solutions, with Sarah heading up technical development, and a budget to build the kind of user-focused platform you've always envisioned. Maya, we're not just talking about acquiring Inventory Flow.
We're talking about you becoming an Amazon VP and building something that could serve millions of small businesses globally." Maya felt her phone buzz with a text from Sarah. "How's the call going? The internet is going crazy with rumors about Amazon acquiring us." Maya glanced at the message and realized that news of their conversation had somehow leaked. Her private moment of career-defining decision-making was becoming public speculation, adding another layer of pressure to an already overwhelming situation. "David, I'm seeing reports online that suggest news of our conversation has become public. How do we handle that?" David's expression shifted, becoming more businesslike. "Maya, that's unfortunate, but not entirely surprising. These conversations rarely stay private for long. What matters now is that we move quickly to either formalize discussions or clarify that no deal is imminent." The implicit pressure in David's statement was clear. Maya needed to make a decision soon before media speculation and market reaction made the situation untenable for both companies.
"What kind of timeline are we talking about?" Maya asked. "If you're interested in moving forward, we could have term sheets ready within a week, full due diligence and closing within 60 days. Maya, I want to be transparent. We're not the only major company that's noticed inventory flow success. Moving quickly protects both of our interests." Maya felt the weight of the decision settling around her like a physical presence. Everything she'd built, everything she'd dreamed of, everything she'd sacrificed for 3 years had led to this moment. Amazon was offering her resources, reach, and recognition beyond anything she'd imagined possible. But they were also asking her to give up the thing that had made inventory flow special, the intimate, personal relationship with users that had driven every decision she'd made since that first weekend building software for Mrs. Rodriguez. "David, I need some time to think about this and discuss it with my team. When would you need an answer?" "Take the time you need, but Maya, I'd recommend making a decision within the next few days. Once acquisition rumors start circulating, they tend to take on a life of their own. It's better for everyone if we can either confirm our mutual interest or clarify that discussions aren't moving forward." After the call ended, Maya sat in the silence of her studio apartment, staring at the whiteboard covered with user flow diagrams that represented 3 years of obsessive work. Her phone was buzzing with calls and texts from reporters, investors, users, and family members who had seen the online speculation about Amazon's interest. Maya ignored the calls and pulled up Inventory Flow's user dashboard. The numbers were still climbing. New signups continued despite the lawsuit. User engagement remained high. Revenue projections looked stronger than ever. She had built something valuable, something that worked, something that mattered to thousands of people. But David's offer represented the chance to scale that impact exponentially, to solve problems for millions of businesses instead of thousands, to have resources that would eliminate every constraint that had limited her vision. Maya's laptop chimed with a video call from Lily, whose face appeared on screen with an expression of barely controlled excitement. "Maya, please tell me you didn't just turn down a $200 million acquisition offer from Amazon without talking to a lawyer first?" Maya blinked. "How did you know about the dollar amount? I didn't mention numbers to anyone." "Maya, it's all over the financial news. Someone leaked details from your call, including Amazon's preliminary offer range. The business press is calling it one of the largest small business software acquisitions of the year." Maya felt the blood drain from her face. Her private conversation with David had become public knowledge, with financial details she hadn't even agreed to yet. The decision she'd wanted to make carefully and thoughtfully had become a media spectacle that would be judged by everyone who had ever doubted her or dismissed her work. "Lily, what do I do now?" "Now you realize that you've built something extraordinary, something that one of the world's most successful companies wants to pay $200 million to own. Maya, do you understand what this means? Do you understand what you've accomplished?" Maya looked around her studio apartment, at the life she'd built in service of a dream that seemed impossible when she started.
The validation she'd sought from her family, from the business world, from everyone who had ever questioned whether her work mattered, it was all there in David's offer, in the media attention, in the recognition that inventory flow was worth more than she'd ever dared to imagine. But as Maya sat surrounded by the artifacts of her obsession, she realized that the most important validation had come 3 years ago in Mrs. Rodriguez's grateful tears when she saw her first profitable month. Everything since then had been building toward this moment, but the heart of what made inventory flow valuable hadn't changed.
Maya had 48 hours to decide whether to accept Amazon's offer or continue building inventory flow independently. The choice would define not just her own future, but the future of everyone who depended on her platform. As the sun set beyond her windows, Maya began making a list of everyone whose opinion mattered in this decision. The list was longer than she'd expected, and every name represented someone whose life would be affected by whatever choice she made. Maya didn't sleep that night. Instead, she sat at her makeshift desk, surrounded by printouts of user testimonials, financial projections, and legal documents, trying to organize the chaos of considerations that would determine inventory flow's future. At 3 a.m., she started making phone calls. The first call went to Mrs. Rodriguez, whose grocery store had been the inspiration for everything Maya had built. Despite the early hour, the elderly woman answered on the second ring, her voice alert with the concern of someone who had spent decades worrying about her business during the quiet hours when problems seemed most insurmountable. "Mija, I saw the news online. My grandson showed me the articles about Amazon wanting to buy your beautiful software. I am so proud of you, but I am also worried." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. Mrs. Rodriguez's pride meant more to her than any amount of media coverage or industry recognition. "What are you worried about, Mrs. Rodriguez?" "When big companies buy small companies, sometimes they forget about the people who made the small companies special. Your software saved my store, Maya. But it wasn't just the software. It was you, caring about my problems, teaching me how to use it, making it work the way my business works." The conversation lasted an hour, with Mrs. Rodriguez sharing stories about how inventory flow had transformed her daily operations, reduced her stress, and allowed her to focus on serving customers instead of wrestling with inventory spreadsheets. But more than that, she talked about feeling seen and understood by technology for the first time in her life. "Whatever you decide, Mija, remember that you built something with your heart. Don't let anyone take the heart out of it." Maya's second call went to Roberto Silva, whose auto parts business had been affected by inventory flow's recent outage. She'd been dreading this conversation, expecting anger and disappointment. Instead, Roberto surprised her with perspective that cut straight to the core of her dilemma. "Maya, I was upset about the outage, yes. It cost me money and caused stress. But you know what impressed me? You didn't hide from the problem. You called me personally, you explained what happened, you fixed it, and you made sure it wouldn't happen again. That's not what I get from enterprise software companies." Roberto went on to describe his experiences with other platforms: impersonal customer service, lengthy resolution times, feature requests that disappeared into corporate bureaucracy. "Inventory flow isn't just software to me. It's a relationship with people who understand my business and care about my success. If Amazon can preserve that, great. If not, you might want to think carefully about what you're giving up." The sun was rising by the time Maya called Sarah, who had been monitoring the overnight media coverage and user response to the acquisition rumors. "Maya, the reaction from users is fascinating. About 60% are excited about the possibility of inventory flow having Amazon's reach and resources, but 40% are genuinely concerned about losing the personal service and rapid development cycle that made them choose us over enterprise alternatives." Sarah had been up all night analyzing user feedback, support tickets, and social media mentions. Her data painted a complex picture of a user base that valued inventory flow's capabilities, but treasured its culture even more. "Sarah, what do you want to do? This decision affects your life as much as mine." "Maya, I've been thinking about that all night. Working with Amazon could give us resources to solve technical challenges that we can't address alone. But I've also seen what happens to acquired companies. Their unique culture gets absorbed into corporate processes, and what made them special disappears. Maya could hear the conflict in Sarah's voice, the same tension between opportunity and authenticity that was keeping her awake. They had built something together that was bigger than either of them individually, and any decision about its future needed to honor that partnership. "What if we counterproposed?" Sarah suggested. "What if we told Amazon we're interested, but only under conditions that preserve inventory flow's independence and user focus?" The idea hit Maya like a revelation. She didn't have to accept or reject Amazon's offer as presented. She could negotiate terms that protected what made inventory flow valuable while gaining access to the resources that could amplify its impact. Maya spent the morning crafting a response to David Kim that laid out her conditions for moving forward with acquisition discussions. She wanted inventory flow to remain a semi-autonomous division with its own product development cycle, customer service approach, and company culture. She wanted guarantees that existing users wouldn't be forced onto Amazon's platforms or lose access to the personalized service they'd come to expect. Most importantly, Maya wanted assurance that Inventory Flow's mission, serving small businesses with empathy, attention, and technological excellence, would be preserved and amplified rather than absorbed and diminished. David's response came within 2 hours. "Maya, your conditions are exactly what we hoped to hear. Amazon's most successful acquisitions have been companies that maintained their unique value propositions while leveraging our infrastructure. Let's schedule a follow-up call to discuss implementation." But before Maya could celebrate, her phone rang with a call that changed everything. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize, but the voice was unmistakably familiar. "Maya, this is Dr. Patricia Vance from Vance & Associates. I'm the attorney representing the plaintiffs in the class action lawsuit against Inventory Flow." Maya's stomach dropped. She'd been so focused on the Amazon acquisition that she'd almost forgotten about the legal threat that could destroy her company regardless of any potential deal. "Dr. Vance, I've been advised not to discuss the lawsuit directly. My sister is reviewing the case and will be responding through proper legal channels." "Maya, I'm calling because I think there's been a misunderstanding. My clients aren't trying to destroy your company. They're trying to get your attention. These are small business owners who love Inventory Flow, but feel like their concerns about reliability and support haven't been adequately addressed." Maya felt the ground shift beneath her feet. The lawsuit wasn't an attack on Inventory Flow's existence. It was a desperate attempt by users to force improvements in areas where her platform had fallen short of their needs. "What do you mean, get our attention?" "Maya, my clients chose to work with me specifically because I specialize in technology disputes that can be resolved through improved service agreements rather than monetary damages. They don't want to sue you, they want to work with you to ensure Inventory Flow can scale reliably as it grows." The conversation that followed was unlike any legal discussion Maya had ever imagined. Dr. Vance outlined specific technical and service improvements that would address her clients' concerns, most of which were already on Inventory Flow's development roadmap. The lawsuit could be dismissed if Maya agreed to implement certain reliability standards and service guarantees within 6 months. "Dr. Vance, why didn't your clients just contact us directly with these concerns?" "They tried, Maya, but when you're a 3-person company growing at your pace, individual user complaints can get lost in the noise. The lawsuit was their way of ensuring their voices would be heard at the executive level." Maya realized that the legal threat she'd been so afraid of was actually another form of user feedback, more dramatic and legally complex than she preferred, but fundamentally driven by the same desire for better service that motivated all of Inventory Flow's development priorities. After hanging up with Dr. Vance, Maya called an emergency video conference with Sarah and Lily to discuss the latest developments. The 3 women who had shaped different aspects of Maya's professional life now found themselves collaborating on decisions that would determine Inventory Flow's future. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work, so if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. "The lawsuit is resolvable," Lily confirmed, after reviewing Dr. Vance's proposed settlement terms. Her clients want service improvements, not monetary damages. Maya, this is actually good news. It means your legal exposure is minimal, and the negative press will disappear once you announce the settlement. Sarah was equally optimistic about the technical requirements. Maya, everything Dr. Vance's clients are asking for is stuff we were already planning to build. The lawsuit just gives us a formal timeline and accountability framework. And the Amazon acquisition? Maya asked. Just got a lot more attractive, Lily said. Amazon's resources would make it easy to implement the reliability improvements that will satisfy the lawsuit. Plus, having Amazon's backing would eliminate any remaining concerns about inventory flow's long-term stability. Maya felt the pieces of a complex puzzle clicking into place. The lawsuit, rather than destroying her opportunity with Amazon, had actually created additional incentive for the acquisition to move forward quickly. Amazon would gain a battle-tested platform with demonstrated user loyalty, while Maya would gain resources to address scaling challenges that had led to user concerns. But more than the strategic considerations, Maya realized that both the lawsuit and the acquisition interest validated the same fundamental truth. Inventory flow had become essential to thousands of businesses, important enough to fight for, and valuable enough for one of the world's largest companies to want. That evening, Maya walked through her neighborhood for the first time in weeks, needing to process everything that had happened away from her laptop and phone notifications. The familiar streets looked different somehow, as if the possibility of leaving this chapter of her life behind had made her more aware of what she would be giving up. She found herself standing outside Mrs. Rodriguez's grocery store, watching through the windows as the elderly woman used Maya's software to process inventory updates at the end of another business day. The sight of her first user still relying on Inventory Flow's daily functionality filled Maya with a pride that no acquisition offer could diminish. Maya pulled out her phone and called David Kim. David, I want to move forward with acquisition discussions, but I need you to understand something. Inventory Flow isn't just a software platform. It's a commitment to small business owners who trust us with their livelihoods. Any deal we make needs to honor that commitment. Maya, that's exactly why we want to acquire Inventory Flow. You've built something with integrity and authenticity that we want to learn from and preserve. Let's schedule a meeting next week to work out the details. As Maya walked home through the evening light, she realized that her decision to accept Amazon's offer wasn't about giving up control of her company. It was about scaling her ability to serve users like Mrs. Rodriguez, Roberto, and the thousands of others who depended on her work. The next morning, Maya woke up not in her studio apartment, but in the life of someone who had built something valuable enough for Amazon to acquire. Someone's hobby business had become a $200 million success story. Someone who had proven every doubter wrong while staying true to the values that had motivated her from the beginning.
3 months later, Maya stood in the floor-to-ceiling windows of Amazon's Seattle headquarters, looking down at the sprawling campus that had become her new professional home. The transition from her studio apartment to a corporate office with a team of 12 engineers still felt surreal, but the view reminded her daily that Inventory Flow's impact was now measured in scales she'd never imagined possible. Her title was Vice President of Small Business Solutions, and her budget was larger than Inventory Flow's entire previous revenue. But more importantly, her mission remained unchanged, building technology that empowered small businesses to compete and thrive in an increasingly complex marketplace. The lawsuit with Dr. Vance's clients had been resolved within 6 weeks of the acquisition announcement, transforming from a legal threat into a collaborative partnership. Roberto Silva now served on Inventory Flow's user advisory board, helping Maya's expanded team understand the real-world challenges that their software needed to address. Mrs. Rodriguez had been invited to speak at Amazon's annual small business conference, sharing her story of transformation from struggling grocery store owner to confident entrepreneur. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah, who was leading technical development from Amazon's Portland satellite office. Just deployed the new predictive analytics feature. Early testing shows 23% improvement in inventory optimization. Mrs. Rodriguez is going to love this. The predictive analytics represented everything Maya had dreamed of building, but never had resources to develop independently. Using Amazon's machine learning infrastructure, inventory flow could now forecast demand patterns, suggest optimal ordering schedules, and identify potential supply chain disruptions before they affected users' businesses. Maya, do you have a minute? Maya turned to see David Kim approaching with someone she didn't recognize, a woman in her 30s wearing the casual professional attire that had become Maya's own uniform since joining Amazon. Maya, I'd like you to meet Jennifer Walsh. She's the founder of TableSync, a restaurant management platform that's been growing rapidly in the Pacific Northwest. Jennifer, Maya built inventory flow from her apartment and sold it to us for $200 million. Jennifer's eyes widened with recognition and excitement. Maya, I've been following your story since the TechCrunch articles. Inventory Flow's approach to user relationships has been a huge inspiration for our own development philosophy. Maya felt a familiar flutter of pride mixed with responsibility. Over the past 3 months, she'd been contacted by dozens of entrepreneurs who wanted to understand how she'd built and scaled inventory flow. The attention was flattering, but also overwhelming. She was still learning how to be a role model for people pursuing their own impossible dreams. Jennifer, what's TableSync's origin story? Maya asked, genuinely curious about another founder's journey. Similar to yours, actually. I was waiting tables while finishing my business degree, watching restaurants struggle with scheduling, inventory, and customer management. I built a simple app to help my manager coordinate shifts, and it evolved into a comprehensive platform that restaurants use to run their entire operations. Maya smiled, recognizing the familiar pattern of accidental entrepreneurship, solving a specific problem for real people, then discovering that the solution had broader applications than anyone had imagined. How many restaurants are using TableSync now? Maya asked. About 3,000, with 150% year-over-year growth. But Maya, I'm facing the same scaling challenges you overcame. My infrastructure costs are eating into profits, customer service demands are overwhelming my small team, and I'm getting acquisition interest from companies that might not preserve what makes TableSync special. David looked between the two women with an expression Maya had learned to recognize, the calculating gaze of someone identifying opportunities for strategic partnerships. Maya, Jennifer's platform integrates beautifully with Inventory Flow's inventory management capabilities. Restaurant owners could use TableSync for operations and Inventory Flow for supply chain optimization, creating a comprehensive solution that neither platform provides alone. Maya felt the familiar excitement that came with solving complex technical problems, but she also felt something new. The responsibility of being someone whose decisions could shape other entrepreneurs' careers. Jennifer, would you be interested in exploring integration partnerships? Not acquisition necessarily, but collaboration that could benefit both our user bases? Jennifer's face lit up with the kind of enthusiasm Maya remembered from her own early conversations with users who understood inventory flow's potential. Maya, that would be incredible. Restaurant inventory management is one of our biggest user pain points, and your platform is exactly what they need. 6 months later. Maya's apartment, now a spacious 2-bedroom in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood, had become an informal gathering place for entrepreneurs building small business software solutions. Every other week, she hosted dinner parties that brought together founders, engineers, investors, and users to share ideas and solve problems collectively. Tonight's gathering included Jennifer Walsh, whose TableSync inventory flow integration had driven significant user growth for both platforms. Marcus Chen, no relation, who had built a platform for managing freelance contractor payments, and Dr. Patricia Vance, who had transitioned from representing plaintiffs against technology companies to helping startups build more ethical user agreements. Maya, I have to ask, do you ever miss the simplicity of working alone in your apartment? Jennifer asked as they sat around Maya's dining table, sharing takeout from a local restaurant that used both TableSync and Inventory Flow to manage their operations. Maya considered the question seriously. She did miss certain aspects of her previous life, the ability to implement features immediately without approval processes, the intimate knowledge of every user's individual needs, the quiet satisfaction of solving problems in solitude. I miss the immediacy, Maya said finally, But I love the impact. Inventory Flow now serves 180,000 businesses across 12 countries. The features we build affect more users in a month than I could have reached in a lifetime working independently. Marcus leaned forward with interest. Maya, how do you maintain the personal touch that made Inventory Flow successful? Corporate structures aren't typically designed for the kind of user relationships that drove your original growth. We institutionalized empathy, Maya replied. Every engineer spends 1 day per month responding to customer service tickets. Every product manager is required to visit user businesses and observe how our software functions in real environments. We measure success not just by revenue growth, but by user satisfaction metrics and qualitative feedback. Dr. Vance nodded approvingly. Maya's approach should be a template for other acquisitions. Too many companies get absorbed into corporate cultures that eliminate what made them valuable in the first place. The conversation continued late into the evening, covering topics from technical architecture to venture capital funding to the ethical responsibilities of building software that people depend on for their livelihoods. 1 year later, Maya stood on the stage at Amazon's annual reInvent conference, looking out at an audience of 50,000 developers, entrepreneurs, and business leaders. Her keynote presentation was titled
Building Technology with Empathy: Lessons from Small Business Software, and it represented the culmination of everything she'd learned about scaling user-focused companies. 3 years ago, I was coding in my studio apartment, wondering if anyone would ever use the inventory management platform I'd built for my neighbor's grocery store, Maya began, her voice carrying clearly through the massive auditorium. Today, Inventory Flow serves over 300,000 small businesses worldwide, integrated with Amazon's logistics network and powered by infrastructure I could never have built independently. The audience was silent, focused as Maya described her journey from accidental entrepreneur to vice president of one of the world's most influential technology companies. But more than her personal story, Maya focused on the principles that had made Inventory Flow successful and sustainable. Technology succeeds when it amplifies human capability rather than replacing human judgment. The businesses that use Inventory Flow don't want to eliminate their decision-making processes. They want better information to make better decisions. Our job as technologists is to understand that distinction and build accordingly. Maya described the integration partnerships that had emerged from her dinner party conversations: TableSync, Marcus's contractor payment platform, and 8 other solutions that created a comprehensive ecosystem for small business operations. Each partnership had been structured to preserve the unique value propositions of individual platforms while creating synergies that benefited everyone. Collaboration scales impact better than competition. When you're solving real problems for real people, there's room for multiple solutions that address different aspects of complex challenges. As Maya concluded her presentation, she shared the metrics that still amazed her. Inventory Flow users had collectively reduced inventory waste by $47 million in the past year, improved cash flow by an average of 18%, and created or maintained over 85,000 jobs through more efficient operations. But the statistic that meant the most to Maya was simpler. 97% of Inventory Flow users would recommend the platform to other business owners. That number represented millions of individual decisions to trust her team with problems that affected real livelihoods, real communities, real dreams. After the presentation, Maya was approached by a young woman who looked familiar, the same combination of determination and uncertainty that Maya remembered from her own early entrepreneurial days. "Miss Chen, I'm Sarah Kim. Not the Sarah who works with you, but another Sarah who's building accounting software for beauty salons. I've been following your story, and I'm wondering, how do you know when you've built something worth scaling?" Maya smiled, remembering similar conversations she'd had with herself 3 years ago, late at night in her apartment, while wondering if Inventory Flow would ever matter to anyone beyond Mrs. Rodriguez. "Sarah, You know you've built something worth scaling when people start trusting it with things that matter to them. Revenue is one indicator, but the real signal is when users begin depending on your solution for decisions that affect their success. Sarah nodded, but I could see the deeper question in her expression, the same question that had driven Maya's sleepless nights and obsessive user research. Sarah, can I give you my direct email? I'd love to see what you're building and maybe introduce you to some of the entrepreneurs who've been part of my journey. Building in isolation is harder than it needs to be. 2 years later, Maya's inbox contained an email that made her laugh out loud sitting in her office on the 37th floor of Amazon's newest tower. The subject line read, "Maya's hobby business generates $50 million in small business savings this quarter." The email was from Lily, who had been tracking inventory flow's impact metrics for a legal case study about successful technology acquisitions. Maya's sister had become one of her fiercest advocates, often sharing Maya's story with her law firm's clients as an example of how to build sustainable, valuable companies.
Maya, Lily had written, I owe you an apology that's 3 years overdue. I was wrong to dismiss your work as a hobby. What you built was never small. I just wasn't smart enough to recognize its significance. You've proven that the most important innovations come from people who understand real problems and care enough to solve them properly. Maya stared at the email for a long moment, feeling the validation she'd sought for so many years. But more than vindication, she felt gratitude for the journey that had brought her to this point, the struggles that had taught her resilience, the users who had trusted her vision, the team members who had helped her scale her impact beyond anything she could have achieved alone. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Martinez. Maya, check TechCrunch. They're running a retrospective on inventory flow called How 3 People in an Apartment Built a Platform That Changed Small Business Forever. Maya pulled up the article, which featured interviews with dozens of inventory flow users whose businesses had been transformed by her platform. Mrs. Rodriguez's quote was featured prominently. Maya didn't just build software, she built hope. She showed us that technology could work for people like us, not just big corporations. The article concluded with a section about inventory flow's influence on the broader technology industry, how Maya's approach to user-focused development had inspired hundreds of other entrepreneurs to build solutions for underserved markets. Chen's legacy isn't just inventory flow. It's the proof that empathy and technical excellence can scale together, that the most valuable companies are those that solve real problems for real people, and that success isn't measured only in revenue, but in the positive impact that technology can have on communities worldwide. Maya closed her laptop and looked out at the Seattle skyline, thinking about the path that had brought her from a cramped studio apartment to a corner office in one of the world's most influential companies. The journey had been nothing like what she'd expected, but it had been exactly what the world needed her to build. 5 years later, Maya stood in the renovated warehouse space that housed the Small Business Technology Incubator, a program she'd launched to support entrepreneurs building solutions for underserved markets. The space buzzed with activity, 23 startups working on everything from agricultural management software to childcare scheduling platforms. Sarah Kim, the beauty salon software founder Maya had met at reInvent, was now the incubator's technical director, having successfully sold her platform to a major salon supply company. Jennifer Walsh ran business development, helping new founders understand market dynamics and user research methodologies. Mrs. Rodriguez, now in her 70s but still operating her thriving grocery store, served as the incubator's user advocate, ensuring that every startup understood the real-world implications of the problems they were trying to solve. Maya, we need to talk about the next cohort applications, Sarah Kim said, as she approached with a stack of folders. We received 340 applications for 12 spots. The quality is incredible. People are building solutions I never would have thought of. Maya smiled, remembering when she'd struggled to imagine inventory flow serving even 1,000 users. Now she was part of an ecosystem that supported entrepreneurs building for millions of people whose needs had been ignored by traditional technology companies. Her phone rang with a call from David Kim,
who had been promoted to senior vice president after the success of Amazon's Small Business Acquisitions Program. "Maya, I have news. The board has approved your proposal for international expansion of the incubator program. We're funding similar programs in Sao Paulo, Mumbai, and Lagos, with you overseeing the global initiative."
Maya felt the familiar flutter of excitement and terror that came with scaling impact beyond her previous imagination. The Technology Incubator program would support entrepreneurs in markets where small businesses faced even greater challenges than those inventory flow had originally addressed. David, what's the timeline? 18 months for full deployment. Maya, this represents the largest investment Amazon has ever made in early-stage technology development outside the United States. The board sees it as a natural extension of Inventory Flow's mission. After the call, Maya walked through the incubator space, observing entrepreneurs who reminded her of herself 5 years earlier. Brilliant, determined people building solutions to problems they understood intimately. The difference was that these founders didn't have to work in isolation the way she had. They had mentorship, resources, and a community of people who understood the challenges of building technology that served real human needs. Maya's reflection was interrupted by laughter from the conference room, where Mrs. Rodriguez was meeting with 3 founders building software for immigrant-owned businesses. Through the glass walls, Maya could see the elderly woman gesturing animatedly as she described the challenges that small business owners faced when navigating complex regulations and language barriers. "Mija," Mrs. Rodriguez had told Maya recently, "you did something very special. You didn't just succeed, you made it possible for others to succeed. That is the real measure of a life well lived." As the sun set over Seattle, Maya realized that Mrs. Rodriguez was right. Inventory Flow's acquisition had been just the beginning of something larger, a movement toward technology that empowered rather than displaced, that solved problems rather than created them, that amplified human capability rather than replacing human judgment. Maya's hobby business had become proof that the most important innovations emerged from people who cared deeply about problems that others dismissed as too small to matter. The $200 million acquisition had been validation, but the real success was measured in the thousands of businesses that operated more efficiently, the millions of customers who received better service, and the communities that thrived because technology had been designed to serve their needs. 10 years later, Maya Chen sat in her home office, which occupied the top floor of a restored Victorian house overlooking Elliott Bay. At 42, she had become one of the most recognized figures in small business technology, but she still preferred working from home when she needed to focus on complex problems. Today, she was reviewing applications for the Chen Foundation's annual grants, which supported entrepreneurs building technology solutions for underserved communities. The foundation had grown out of her desire to ensure that the success of Inventory Flow created opportunities for others facing similar challenges. Maya's assistant knocked on her door with a package that had arrived by special courier. Inside, she found a handwritten letter and a small wooden plaque that read, "First customer, forever grateful." The letter was from Mrs. Rodriguez's granddaughter, Elena, who now managed the family's 3 grocery stores, all of which still used Inventory Flow's latest enterprise platform. "Dear Maya," the letter began in careful handwriting. "Abuela passed away peacefully last week at age 89. In her final days, she talked constantly about the young woman who had changed her life with a computer program built from kindness. She wanted you to have this plaque, which she made in her woodworking class last year. She said you were the first person who made technology feel like a friend instead of an enemy." Maya held the wooden plaque, feeling its smooth surface and reading the inscription through tears she didn't try to hide. Mrs. Rodriguez had been more than Inventory Flow's first customer. She had been its heart, its moral compass, its reminder that technology succeeded only when it served human dignity.
The letter continued, "Maya, Abuela also wanted you to know that because of Inventory Flow's success, our family was able to send 4 grandchildren to college, expand to 3 locations, and employed 27 people from our community. She said that your success created our success, and that was exactly how the world should work." Maya set the letter aside and walked to her window.
looking out at the city where her impossible dream had become reality. In the distance, she could see Amazon's headquarters, where a team of 200 people now worked on inventory flow and its integrated small business solutions platform. The software that had started in her studio apartment now served 1.2 million businesses in 47 countries. But more than the scale, Maya was proud of what they had preserved. Inventory Flow's customer satisfaction rating had remained above 95%, even as it grew. Users still received personal responses to support requests. Feature development was still driven by real business needs rather than corporate strategy documents. The platform had scaled without losing its soul. Maya's phone chimed with a video call from Sarah Martinez, who was calling from the Sao Paulo office of their international incubator program. Behind Sarah, Maya could see a room full of Brazilian entrepreneurs working on solutions for local small businesses. "Maya, you need to see what Carla built," Sarah said, her excitement evident even through the video connection. "She's created inventory management software specifically for street vendors and informal market sellers. It works on the most basic smartphones and doesn't require internet connectivity. Maya, she's solving problems for millions of people who've never been served by traditional business software." Maya smiled, recognizing the familiar pattern of innovation emerging from deep understanding of underserved communities. Carla's work represented the global expansion of everything Maya had learned building Inventory Flow, that the most valuable technology emerged from empathy, observation, and genuine desire to solve real problems. "Maya, what does Carla need to scale her platform?" "Mostly what you needed 10 years ago: infrastructure support, user acquisition strategy, and validation that she's building something valuable. Maya, her user satisfaction scores are 98%. Street vendors are trusting her with their entire business operations." Maya made a note to schedule a call with Carla later that week. The Chen Foundation's next major grant would likely support exactly the kind of grassroots innovation that Carla represented, technology built by and for communities that traditional companies ignored. Maya's laptop chimed with an email notification from Jennifer Walsh, who now served as CEO of the Small Business Technology Alliance, an industry organization Maya had helped establish to advocate for entrepreneurs serving underserved markets. "Maya, incredible news! The U.S. Commerce Department is citing Inventory Flow's success in their new report on small business technology adoption. They're using your platform as the primary example of how well-designed software can drive economic growth in underserved communities." The email included a link to the government report, which detailed how Inventory Flow and similar platforms had contributed to a 34% increase in small business survival rates over the past decade. The report estimated that Maya's work had helped create or preserve over 400,000 jobs and generated $2.8 billion in additional economic activity. Maya read the statistics with a mixture of pride and humility. She had never set out to influence government policy or drive macroeconomic change. She had simply wanted to help Mrs. Rodriguez manage her grocery store more efficiently. But the ripple effects of solving one person's problem with genuine care and technical excellence had expanded far beyond anything she could have imagined. Her phone buzzed with a text from Lily. "Maya, did you see Dad's interview with the Taiwan American Business Association newsletter? He told them that his daughter taught him that the best engineering isn't about building the most impressive structures. It's about building solutions that make people's lives better. I've never heard him so proud." Maya smiled, remembering the years when her parents had worried about her unconventional career path. Her father's engineering awards still hung in their living room, but now they were accompanied by framed articles about Inventory Flow's impact and Maya's recognition as one of the technology industry's most influential leaders. But more meaningful than any external validation was the knowledge that Maya had built something that honored the values her parents had taught her: hard work, empathy for others, responsibility to community, and the belief that immigrants' children could achieve anything if they combined determination with integrity. Maya returned to her grant applications, reading proposals from entrepreneurs in rural Alabama building farm management software.
urban Detroit founders creating platforms for small manufacturers, and recent immigrants in Los Angeles developing solutions for ethnic grocery stores and restaurants. Each application told a story similar to Maya's own. People who had identified problems through personal experience and were determined to build solutions that would help their communities thrive. Maya's job was to provide the resources, mentorship, and validation that would help these entrepreneurs scale their impact without losing their connection to the people they served. As the afternoon sun slanted through her office windows, Maya realized that Mrs. Rodriguez's wooden plaque represented more than gratitude from a satisfied customer. It represented the completion of a circle that had begun with one elderly woman's struggle to manage her inventory and had expanded to encompass a global movement toward more humane, more effective technology. Maya placed the plaque on her desk where she would see it every day as she continued the work of supporting entrepreneurs who understood that the most important innovations emerged from love, not just logic. 15 years later. The auditorium at Stanford University was packed beyond capacity, with overflow crowds watching on screens in adjacent halls. Maya had been invited to deliver the commencement address for the School of Engineering, but her message was intended for a broader audience than just graduating students. At 47, Maya had achieved a level of influence she never imagined possible, but she remained fundamentally the same person who had built inventory flow from empathy and determination. Her hair was grayer, her confidence deeper, but her core commitment to solving real problems for real people remained unchanged. Quote, 15 years ago, Maya began, her voice carrying clearly through the massive auditorium, I was coding in a studio apartment trying to help my elderly neighbor manage her grocery store inventory. I had no idea that simple act of service would lead to building one of the world's largest small business technology platforms. Maya described her journey not as a success story, but as an illustration of how individual acts of empathy could scale to create systemic change. She talked about Mrs. Rodriguez, whose trust had launched everything that followed. She discussed the lawsuit that had taught her that growth without reliability was meaningless. She shared the story of her Amazon acquisition and how it had enabled global expansion while preserving local focus. Quote, the most important lesson I learned wasn't technical. It was that technology succeeds when it amplifies human dignity rather than replacing human judgment. Every line of code you write, every system you design, every problem you solve should make people more capable, more confident, more connected to their communities. Maya's speech focused on the responsibilities that came with technological capability. She challenged the graduating students to identify problems that mattered to communities they cared about, rather than chasing trends or pursuing solutions that existed primarily to generate profit. Quote, your generation has access to tools and resources that previous generations could never have imagined. But tools without purpose create noise, not value. The question isn't what you can build, it's what you should build and why it matters to people whose lives you want to improve. As Maya concluded her address, she shared the statistic that still amazed her. Platforms inspired by Inventory Flow's approach now serve over 15 million small businesses globally, supporting an estimated 45 million jobs and generating hundreds of billions of dollars in economic activity.
But the number that matters most to me, Maya said, is still one. One grocery store owner who trusted a stranger with her dreams. One line of code that solved one person's problem. One decision to care about someone else's success as much as your own. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes, but Maya was thinking about Mrs. Rodriguez's wooden plaque, which still sat on her desk as a reminder that the most valuable innovations began with individual acts of love disguised as technology. After the ceremony, Maya was approached by a young woman whose graduation cap was decorated with small logos from various programming languages. Professor Chen, I'm Lisa Patel. I've been following your work since high school, and I'm starting a company that builds financial management software for immigrant-owned restaurants. I was wondering, would you be willing to look at our prototype? Maya smiled, seeing herself 15 years younger in Lisa's eager expression and careful preparation. Lisa, I'd be honored to review your work, But more importantly, I'd like to introduce you to some other entrepreneurs who are building solutions for underserved communities. The work is easier when you're not doing it alone. Maya handed Lisa her business card, but also gave her something more valuable, the promise that her journey would be supported by a community of people who understood that the most important technology emerged from genuine care for human flourishing. As Maya walked across Stanford's campus toward her car, she reflected on the path that had brought her from a struggling graduate student to one of the technology industry's most respected leaders. The journey had been unpredictable, challenging, and sometimes terrifying, but it had been guided by consistent principles: solve real problems, serve underserved communities, scale impact without losing empathy. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Elena Rodriguez. "Maya, thought you'd like to know, we're opening our 4th location next month, and it's going to be named the Rodriguez Chen Community Market in honor of you and Abuela's partnership. You changed our family story, and now we want to help change other family stories too." Maya sat in her car for a moment, overwhelmed by the continuing ripple effects of work she'd started in a studio apartment with nothing but determination and a desire to help one person solve one problem. The grocery store that would bear her name represented not personal recognition, but collective achievement, the success that emerged when technology served community rather than exploiting it. As Maya drove home through the California evening, she thought about the young entrepreneurs she'd met that day, the problems they were determined to solve, and the communities they were committed to serving. Each of them carried the potential to create change that would expand far beyond their individual efforts, just as Maya's work had grown from helping Mrs. Rodriguez to supporting millions of businesses worldwide. The road ahead was illuminated by streetlights and possibility, carrying Maya toward whatever challenges and opportunities awaited someone who had learned that the most powerful technology began with the simple decision to care about others' success as much as your own. 20 years later, Maya Chen stood in the memorial garden that had been dedicated in Mrs. Rodriguez's honor at the site of the original grocery store. The small park featured a bronze statue of an elderly woman examining inventory with the help of a tablet computer, surrounded by benches where neighborhood children played while their parents conducted business on smartphones. At 52, Maya had transitioned from active technology leadership to mentorship and philanthropy, but her influence on the industry continued to expand through the hundreds of entrepreneurs who had been shaped by her example and supported by her foundation. Today marked the 20th anniversary of Inventory Flow's launch, and Maya had been invited to speak at a celebration that brought together users, employees, competitors, and admirers from around the world. But before the public ceremony, she wanted a few minutes alone with the memory of the woman who had made everything possible.
Maya placed a bouquet of flowers at the base of Mrs. Rodriguez's statue and read the inscription aloud. Elena Rodriguez, teacher, entrepreneur, friend. She showed us that trust is the foundation of all progress. A young voice interrupted Maya's reflection. "Excuse me, are you Maya Chen?" Maya turned to see a boy who looked about 12 years old, holding a tablet computer and wearing a t-shirt that read, "Future Entrepreneur." "I'm Miguel Rodriguez Santos," the boy continued. "I'm Elena's great-grandson. My mom told me you knew my great-great-grandmother and that you built the computer program that saved her store." Maya knelt down to Miguel's eye level, seeing in his face the same combination of curiosity and determination that had characterized Mrs. Rodriguez. "Miguel, your great-great-grandmother was one of the most remarkable people I ever met. She taught me that the best technology helps people do what they already do well, but with more confidence and better information." Miguel nodded seriously, then showed Maya his tablet screen. "I'm building an app that helps kids in our neighborhood find part-time jobs and save money for college. My teacher says it's like what you did, but for young people instead of businesses." Maya studied Miguel's prototype with the same attention she had given to Inventory Flow's early user feedback. The app was simple but thoughtfully designed, addressing real problems that Miguel understood from personal experience. "Miguel, this is excellent work. Have you tested it with other kids in your neighborhood?"
23 of my friends are using it now, and they've all found jobs or started saving more money. Miguel's excitement was infectious, reminding Maya of her own early discoveries about user adoption and organic growth. Maya spent 15 minutes reviewing Miguel's code and discussing his business model, offering suggestions based on 20 years of experience building platforms that served underserved communities. But more importantly, she gave him the same gift that mentors had given her: validation that his work mattered and encouragement to continue developing solutions for problems he understood personally. Miguel, I'd like to introduce you to some people at today's celebration. There are entrepreneurs, investors, and engineers who specialize in supporting young founders like you. As Maya walked with Miguel toward the anniversary celebration, she realized that Mrs. Rodriguez's influence continued to expand through new generations who understood that technology succeeded when it emerged from community knowledge and genuine care for others' success. The celebration venue was decorated with timeline displays showing Inventory Flow's evolution from Maya's apartment prototype to a global platform serving 3.2 million businesses. But the displays that drew the largest crowds weren't about technology or revenue. They featured stories from users whose lives had been transformed by having access to tools that understood their needs. Maya's keynote speech focused not on Inventory Flow's technical achievements, but on the principles that had guided its development and the community of entrepreneurs who had been inspired to build similar solutions for other underserved markets. 20 years ago, I thought I was building inventory management software, Maya said to the audience of 2,000 people. But I was actually learning to build bridges between communities that needed technology and an industry that hadn't learned how to serve them effectively. Maya described how Inventory Flow's success had catalyzed a broader movement towards inclusive technology development, inspiring hundreds of platforms designed specifically for communities that traditional companies had ignored. The collective impact of this movement was measured not just in economic terms, but in social cohesion, individual dignity, and community resilience. The most important metric of any technology platform, Maya concluded, isn't how many users it serves, but how much it improves the lives of the people who trust it with their dreams.
As the celebration continued into the evening, Maya found herself surrounded by people whose lives had intersected with Inventory Flow's story in unexpected ways. Former employees who had started their own companies, users who had expanded from single locations to multi-state operations, competitors who had adopted Inventory Flow's user-focused development methodologies. But the conversation that affected Maya most deeply was with Dr. Patricia Vance, the attorney who had represented the class action lawsuit against Inventory Flow 15 years earlier. Maya, I need you to know that our legal challenge wasn't the end of our story together, Dr. Vance said. It was the beginning of a collaboration that changed how I think about technology regulation and corporate responsibility. Dr. Vance described how her experience with Inventory Flow had led her to specialize in helping technology companies build more ethical relationships with their users. She now served as a consultant to dozens of startups, helping them avoid the scaling challenges that had led to legal difficulties for Maya's early platform. Maya, you showed us that growth and responsibility aren't mutually exclusive. Inventory Flow became more reliable and more valuable after it addressed our concerns. That model has influenced how I approach every technology dispute I handle. As the evening wound down, Maya walked through the memorial garden one more time, accompanied by Miguel and several other young entrepreneurs she'd met during the celebration. They sat on benches surrounding Mrs. Rodriguez's statue, discussing problems they wanted to solve and communities they hoped to serve. Ms. Chen, what do you think great-great-grandmother Rodriguez would say if she could see all this? Maya looked at the statue, imagining the elderly woman's reaction to the global movement that had emerged from their simple collaboration. I think she would say that she always knew technology could be a force for dignity and community, but she needed someone who was willing to listen and learn from her experience. Miguel,
You and your friends represent the next generation of people who understand that the most powerful innovations emerge from caring about others as much as you care about success. The young entrepreneurs continued their conversation as Maya walked to her car, their voices carrying the same mixture of idealism and practical determination that had driven her own journey 2 decades earlier. Maya's phone chimed with a message from Sarah Martinez, who was now leading technology development for the United Nations Small Business Development Program. Maya, congratulations on 20 years of changing the world one business at a time. Mrs. Rodriguez would be so proud of everything her trust made possible. As Maya drove home through the city where her impossible dream had become reality, she thought about the statue they had dedicated to Mrs. Rodriguez and the legacy it represented. The elderly grocery store owner had trusted a young programmer with her business problems, and that act of faith had rippled outward to create opportunities for millions of people whose needs had previously been ignored by the technology industry. Maya's story was ending where it had begun, with a recognition that the most valuable innovations emerged from individual relationships built on trust, empathy, and mutual commitment to success. The $200 million acquisition, the global platform, the industry recognition, and the social impact had all been byproducts of a simpler truth. Technology succeeded when it served human dignity. The lights of the city spread out before Maya's car like circuits on a vast motherboard. Each one represented someone's dreams, struggles, and hopes for a better future. Some of those lights illuminated businesses that used inventory flow or platforms that had inspired. Others represented entrepreneurs building solutions for problems Maya had never imagined.
But all of them were connected by the understanding that Maya had learned from Mrs. Rodriguez 20 years earlier, that technology's highest purpose was amplifying human capability, strengthening community bonds, and creating opportunities for people to achieve their full potential. As Maya pulled into her driveway, she looked up at her home office window, where the wooden plaque still sat on her desk, visible through the glass. First customer, forever grateful. The inscription had guided every decision Maya had made for 2 decades, and it would continue to influence whatever work awaited her in the years to come. Maya turned off her car and sat for a moment in the quiet darkness, grateful for the journey that had brought her from a struggling graduate student to someone whose work had touched millions of lives, but even more grateful for the teacher who had shown her that the most powerful technology began with the simple decision to care.